I thought my biggest problem was my wife Alara forgetting my birthday again. Then I discovered she'd secretly listed another man as our 3-year-old son's father on his medical records. That was just the beginning of a web of lies that cost our family $63,000 and nearly destroyed everything I'd built. My name is Marcus Valente. I'm 42 years old, and I own 4 dry cleaning shops here in suburban Ohio. I've been married to Alara for 18 years, and we have 3 kids. Julian, who just turned 16, Clara, our 14-year-old daughter, and little Finn, our 3-year-old surprise blessing. The thing about owning dry cleaning shops is that people think it's easy money. Wrong. It's early mornings, late nights, dealing with difficult customers, and constantly worrying about equipment breaking down. But I loved it because it meant I could provide stability for my family, something my old man never gave us growing up. Alara used to appreciate that. She'd bring me coffee at the main shop downtown, help with the books on weekends, even brought the kids by after school. Julian and Clara would do homework in the back office while I finished up orders. Those were good times when we felt like a team. But somewhere along the way, things started shifting. Alara became less interested in hearing about work, stopped asking about business challenges. She started going out more with girlfriends, joining a yoga class that met awfully often, taking weekend trips to visit her sister in Columbus. I figured she needed space, needed her own life outside of being a mom and business owner's wife. The first red flag should have been when she suddenly became obsessed with her appearance. Don't get me wrong, Alara's always been beautiful. Long auburn hair, green eyes, the kind of smile that could light up a room. But around 6 months ago, she started hitting the gym religiously, bought a whole new wardrobe, started getting her nails done every week. Then came the phone calls, late-night conversations that would end abruptly when I walked into the room. Text messages that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in months. But when I'd ask who was texting, she'd say it was just her sister or one of the soccer moms. The phone was always face down now, always password protected. I started working longer hours, partly because business was picking up, but mostly because the atmosphere at home had become tense. Julian was acting out at school. Clara seemed withdrawn, and poor little Finn was spending more time with his teenage siblings than with his parents. The breaking point came last Tuesday. I was reviewing our family's medical insurance claims online, something I do quarterly. That's when I saw it, a pediatrician visit for Finn that I knew nothing about. But what really caught my attention was the emergency contact information. Instead of my name as the father, someone named Felix Dubois was listed as the primary contact. I stare at that screen for 20 minutes trying to figure out how this could be a mistake. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't. Alara had deliberately changed our son's medical records to list another man as his father figure. That evening when Alara came home from her book club, I was waiting in the kitchen with a printed copy of the insurance claim. The look on her face when she saw that paper told me everything I needed to know. The silence in our kitchen felt heavier than anything I'd experienced in 18 years of marriage. Alara stood frozen in the doorway, her book club alibi crumbling as she stared at the insurance document in my hands. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the color draining from her face. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the paper. My voice was steady, but inside I felt like I was free falling. Alara sat down her purse with deliberate slowness, buying herself time to craft whatever lie was forming in her mind. "I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus." "Felix Dubois," I said, reading from the document listed as emergency contact for our 3-year-old son. "Care to explain who Felix Dubois is and why he suddenly?" "Finn's father figure?" She walked to the refrigerator, opened it, closed it without taking anything out. Classic Alara stalling tactic. "It's probably just a clerical error. You know how these insurance companies mess things up." "Alara," I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. "I called the pediatrician's office today. They said you personally updated Finn's emergency contacts 3 weeks ago. You signed a form yourself." Her shoulders tensed. When she turned around, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not shame, but calculation. She was weighing her options, deciding how much truth she could get away with. "Fine," she said, crossing her arms. "Felix is a friend. He's been helping out with the kids when you're working late. which is pretty much every day. I thought it made sense to have someone reliable listed who's actually available. Available for what exactly? The question hung between us like a blade for emergencies. Marcus, what do you think? Her voice had that edge it got when she was cornered, sharp and defensive. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Funny thing about clerical errors. They leave digital trails. This says the change was made on March 15th. That was my birthday. Alara, the birthday you forgot again. Her face went completely blank. Not surprised, not apologetic blank. Like she was calculating whether to double down on the lie or pivot to a new strategy. I've been overwhelmed, she said finally. Clara's soccer schedule, Julian's driving lessons, Finn's terrible twos turning into terrible threes. I can't keep track of everything, but you can keep track of Felix Dubois' schedule well enough to make him our son's emergency contact. She turned away from me, started wiping down counters that were already clean. He's been a good friend to this family. More present than you've been lately. The words hit like a physical blow. More present. I work 60 hours a week to keep this family comfortable. To pay for Clara's soccer camps and Julian's car insurance in this house, and everything else you take for granted. When's the last time you helped Finn with his bedtime routine? She shot back. When's the last time you attended one of Clara's games? You're so busy being the provider that you forgot how to be a father. I stared at her, seeing clearly for the first time in months. This wasn't about my work schedule or forgetting birthdays. This was about her building a case, creating a narrative that would justify whatever she'd been doing behind my back. How long? I asked quietly. How long? What? How long have you been seeing him? Alara stopped wiping the counter. Her silence stretched until it became an answer itself. I want you to leave, I said. Tonight, go stay with your sister. Go stay with Felix. I don't care. But you're not sleeping in this house tonight. You can't kick me out of my own home, she said. But her voice lacked conviction. Watch me, I replied. And Alara? Tomorrow morning, I'm calling our lawyer. Alara didn't leave that night. Instead, she locked herself in our bedroom and made phone calls until almost midnight. I could hear her voice through the door. Urgent, hushed conversations that confirmed my worst suspicions. She was calling Felix, no doubt, coordinating their stories before the walls came tumbling down. I spent the night on the living room couch, staring at the ceiling and listening to my children sleep upstairs. Julian had asked why Mom seemed upset when he came down for a glass of water around 10 o'clock. I told him everything was fine, but the kid's too smart for his own good. He gave me that look that said he knew I was lying. The next morning, I dropped Finn off at daycare and went straight to our bank. 23 years of marriage had taught me to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. What I found in our account statements made my blood run cold. Mr. Valente, the bank manager Ms. Moreau said, pulling up our records on her computer. I see you hear about some unusual transactions on your joint account. Over the past 6 months, Alara had been making cash withdrawals. Twice a week. 500 here, 300 there. Always just under the limit that would trigger automatic notifications to me. She'd also opened a separate savings account that I knew nothing about, transferring money from our business account in small increments. The total comes to just over $18,000, the manager said. All withdrawn or transferred with your wife's authorization. $18,000 gone. Money that should have been going toward Julian's college fund, toward the new equipment I needed for the downtown shop, toward our family's future. Instead, it had been funding Alara's double life. I drove to my main shop in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. My assistant manager, Leo, took one look at my face and knew something was seriously wrong. Boss, you look like you've seen a ghost, Leo said. Worse, I replied. I've seen my bank statements. That afternoon, while Alara thought I was buried in work, I hired a private investigator. Inspector Benno came highly recommended by my lawyer, a former police detective who specialized in marital cases. He was a straight shooter with gray hair and knowing eyes who didn't judge when I explained the situation. How long do you want to watch her? Benno asked. Long enough to document everything. I said, I need to know where my money went, who this Felix character really is, and what else my wife has been lying about. In my experience, Mr. Valente, when someone starts changing financial records and medical documents, There's usually a lot more beneath the surface. Are you prepared for what I might find? I thought about my kids, about the life we'd built, about 18 years of what I thought was a solid marriage. I'm prepared for the truth, whatever it is. That evening, Alara came home with a new strategy. She was all smiles and apologies, claiming she'd been under stress and made support decisions. She even suggested we take a family vacation to reconnect. Where do you suggest we go? I asked, not bothering to look up from my laptop. Maybe that cabin resort in Michigan you always talked about. We could leave next weekend. With what money, Alara? The 18,000 you've been siphoning out of our accounts. Or should I dip into the kids' college funds? The smile dyed our face. She realized I'd been to the bank, and her whole damage control plan just fell apart. Inspector Benno worked fast. Within 3 days, he had enough evidence to fill a manila folder that felt like it weighed 100 pounds when he handed it to me across the table at our local diner. Your wife's been busy, Benno said, his tone professional but sympathetic. Felix Dubois is 38 years old, divorced. Works as a sales manager at the Ford dealership across town. He's been renting a one-bedroom apartment on Elm Street since February. He slid a stack of photographs across the table. Alara and Felix entering the apartment together. Alara and Felix at restaurants I couldn't afford. Alara and Felix shopping at stores where she told me she was buying things for the kids. The money trail gets interesting, Benno continued. She's been paying half his rent, bought him a watch that retails for $3,000, and funded what looks like a pretty expensive lifestyle for both of them. My hand shook as I flipped through the evidence. How long? Based on credit card records and witness statements. At least 8 months, maybe longer. 8 months. While I was working 16-hour days to keep our business afloat, while I was missing family dinners to provide for our future, my wife was playing house with another man using our money. There's something else, Benno said quietly. Your son Finn has been to that apartment multiple times. Neighbors have seen your wife bringing him there regularly. That was the breaking point. I could handle the betrayal. I could handle the financial theft, but putting my 3-year-old son in the middle of her affair was unforgivable. I drove home with Benno's folder on the passenger seat. My mind made up about what came next. Alara was in the kitchen making dinner when I walked in, humming the same tune she'd been humming for weeks. We need to talk, I said, setting the folder on the counter. She glanced at it nervously. What's that? The truth. Finally, I opened the folder and spread the photographs across the kitchen island like a deck of cards. Alara's face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, anger, defiance, and finally resignation. You hired someone to spy on me? She asked. I hired someone to protect my family's interests. Turns out there was plenty to protect them from. Julian chose that moment to walk into the kitchen looking for a snack. He stopped dead when he saw the photographs scattered across the counter. Dad, he said, his voice uncertain. What's going on? I quickly gathered up the pictures, but not before Julian saw enough to understand. His face went pale as he looked between his mother and me. Julian, go upstairs, Alara said sharply. No, I said. He's 16 years old. He deserves to know why his family is falling apart. I turned to my son. This kid who'd been forced to grow up too fast because his mother couldn't be bothered to act like a parent. Your mother has been having an affair, I said. She's been stealing money from our family to pay for it, and she's been taking your little brother to her boyfriend's apartment. Julian stared at his mother with a look of disgust that cut deeper than any anger could have. Mom, is that true? Alara's mask finally slipped completely. It's complicated, Julian. You wouldn't understand. I understand enough, he said. I understand why Dad's been working so much. I understand why you're never here for Finn's bedtime. I understand why Clara has been crying in a room. He turned and walked out, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. A few seconds later, we heard his bedroom door slam. Look what you've done, Alara said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Look what I've done. I stared at her in disbelief. I'm not the one who destroyed this family. The next morning brought new complications. Clara came downstairs for breakfast with red eyes and a defiant expression that reminded me painfully of her mother. Julian told me everything, Clara said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. Is it true about Mom? I poured her orange juice, choosing my words carefully. Yes, it's true. Where is she? She left early this morning. Said she was going to stay with Aunt Cosima for a few days. Clara picked her cereal without eating. This is why you've been working so much, isn't it? You knew something was wrong. I suspected, I admitted, but I hoped I was wrong. Julian appeared in the doorway holding Finn's hand. Our 3-year-old looked confused by the tension everyone was trying to hide from him. Dad, what's going to happen to us? Julian asked. We're going to be fine, I said, pulling Finn onto my lap. This family is stronger than whatever your mother has done to it. But privately, I was worried about the custody battle that was coming. Alara had already proven she'd manipulate medical records and involve the children in her deception. What else was she capable of? That afternoon, my lawyer called with disturbing news. Marcus, your wife filed for temporary custody this morning. She's claiming you've been emotionally abusive and that the children aren't safe with you. That's ridiculous. I said she's the one who's been stealing money and bringing her boyfriend around the kids. I know, but she's playing the victim card. We need to be prepared for a fight. When I picked up Finn from daycare, the director pulled me aside. Mr. Valente, your wife was here earlier with a man I didn't recognize. She tried to add him to the authorized pickup list, but I told her we needed your signature, too, Felix. She was still trying to insert him into our son's life, even after being caught. That evening, while helping Clara with homework, I noticed she kept checking her phone with a worried expression. What's wrong, sweetheart? Mom's been texting me all day. Clara said she wanted to tell her what you've been saying about her. What did you tell her? Nothing. But Dad, she's saying. Things about you that don't sound true. She says you've been threatening her and that she's scared to come home. I sat down beside my daughter. Clara, I need you to understand something. Your mother is going to try to turn you kids against me. She's going to tell you stories that make me look like the bad guy, but you know me. You know I would never hurt anyone in this family. Clara nodded, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. At 14, she was old enough to understand that her world was falling apart, but still young enough to want both parents to be the good guys. 3 days later, I discovered Alara had escalated beyond emotional manipulation. She'd frozen our joint accounts and maxed out our credit cards on purchases I couldn't trace. Why try to access our business account to make payroll? I found she cleaned that out, too. Leo, I need you to handle the shop today, I told my assistant manager. I've got legal issues to sort out. My lawyer's office felt like a war room. Documents spread across the conference table showed the extent of Alara's financial assault on our family. She's transferred most of your liquid assets to accounts you can't access. My lawyer explained. The good news is we can prove it's theft. The bad news is it'll take time to recover the money. What about my business? I can't make payroll without that money. You'll need an emergency loan. I can help you with the paperwork. That afternoon brought another blow. Alara showed up at Julian's school claiming I was unstable and dangerous. The principal called me immediately. Mr. Valente, your wife is requesting that we not release Julian to you without her permission. She seemed quite distressed. Did she provide any evidence of these claims? I asked. No, but we have to take all safety concerns seriously. Can you come in so we can discuss this? I drove to the school thinking about how Alara was using our children as weapons. She knew I'd do anything to protect them, and she was exploiting that love to gain advantage in the divorce. When I arrived, I found Julian sitting in the principal's office looking embarrassed and angry. Dad, I told them Mom was lying, Julian said. But they won't let me leave with you. It's okay, son. We'll sort this out. The principal, Madame Chevalier, looked uncomfortable. Mr. Valente, I've known your family for years. This is very difficult for all of us. Madame Chevalier, I said calmly. My wife is having an affair and has been stealing money from our family business. She's desperate to make me look like the unstable one because she knows what she's done is indefensible. I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank statements and Benno's photographs. This is why she's suddenly concerned about the children's safety. Not because they're in danger, but because her lies are falling apart. After an hour of discussion and phone calls to the school district's legal department, they released Julian to me. But the damage was done. Other parents were already whispering, wondering what kind of man requires a meeting with lawyers before picking up his own child. That night, Clara asked the question I've been dreading. Dad, do you still love Mom? I thought about lying, about giving her some hope that we could fix this mess, but she deserved honesty. I love the woman I married, I said, but that woman doesn't exist anymore. The person your mother has become is someone I don't recognize. Clara nodded sadly. I don't recognize her either. Inspector Benno called me at the shop on Thursday morning with information that made my head spin. Marcus, you need to sit down for this one. I've been tracking your wife's spending, and I found something interesting. More interesting than $18,000 in cash withdrawals. Much more. She's been making payments to a plastic surgery clinic in Columbus. $43,000 over the past 4 months. I nearly dropped the phone. $43,000 for what? Full body makeover, breast enhancement, liposuction, some kind of facial work. The payments came from a credit line she opened using your business as collateral. My business, the dry cleaning shops I built from nothing, were being used to finance my wife's affair transformation. She hadn't just stolen our savings. She'd mortgaged our future. There's more, Benno continued. The clinic's records show Felix Du Bois as her emergency contact and designated driver for all procedures. So, Felix had been there for her recovery while I believed she was visiting her sister. Every business trip, every weekend away, every excuse about feeling unwell, it was all part of financing and hiding her physical transformation for another man. That afternoon, I confronted Alara when she came to pick up more clothes. She looked different somehow, and now I understood why. The subtle changes I'd attributed to new makeup and exercise were actually surgical enhancements. We need to discuss the plastic surgery, I said, blocking her path to the stairs. Her face went pale. What plastic surgery? The $43,000 worth you charged to our business credit line. The procedures Felix drove you to in Columbus. Alara's composure finally shattered completely. She sat down hard on the living room couch, her hands shaking. How did you find out? Does it matter? What matters is that you used our children's future to make yourself attractive to your boyfriend. It wasn't like that, she said weakly. Then what was it like? Explain to me how stealing $43,000 for cosmetic surgery makes sense. I wanted to feel good about myself again, she said. I wanted to feel desired. So you destroyed our family's financial security to impress a man who helped you deceive your husband and children. Julian appeared in the doorway, having heard raised voices. Mom, is it true? Did you really spend all that money on surgery? Alara looked at our 16-year-old son with something that might have been shame. Julian, it's complicated. No, it's not complicated. Julian said it's selfish. Dad's been working 16-hour days to keep our family going, and you've been spending our money to look good for your boyfriend. He turned and walked away, his disgust evident in every step. Look what you've done, Alara said to me. What I've done, I told the truth. You're the one who chose to live a lie. My lawyer's emergency meeting the next morning was grim. Marcus, the credit line secured by your business puts everything at risk. If you can't make the payments, they can seize your assets. How much time do I have? 60 days before they can begin foreclosure proceedings. But there's another problem. Your wife filed for spousal support yesterday. She's claiming she's been financially dependent and needs maintenance. The audacity was breathtaking. Alara wanted me to pay her monthly support after she'd stolen our savings and mortgaged our business for plastic surgery. Can we counter with evidence of theft? Absolutely. We'll file criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. But Marcus, this is going to get ugly fast. That afternoon brought another blow. Clara came home from school upset, reporting that some of her friends' mothers have been asking intrusive questions about her family situation. They're saying things about you, Dad. Mrs. Henderson asked if it was true that you'd been threatening Mom. Alara's campaign to destroy my reputation was spreading through her social circles. She was positioning herself as the victim while hiding her own actions. That evening, I sat down with all 3 children for a family meeting. Even little Finn seemed to sense the seriousness of the moment. Kids, I want you to know exactly what's happening, so no one can lie to you about it. Your mother took our family's money for Julian's college, money for the business, money for our future, and spent it on surgery to make herself look different for her boyfriend. Clara's eyes filled with tears. How much money? More than $60,000 total. Money we don't have. Julian looked angry. What does this mean for college? It means we're going to have to rebuild, but we will rebuild together. What about the business? Clara asked. I'm fighting to keep it, but even if I lose the shops, I'll find another way to provide for this. Family. Finn climbed onto my lap, not understanding the words, but sensing the emotion. Daddy's sad. Daddy's disappointed, I said, hugging him close. But Daddy's also determined to protect his children. That night, after the kids were asleep, I made a decision that would change everything. I called Inspector Benno and asked him to document every asset Alara and Felix had acquired during their affair. If she wanted to play hardball, I'd show her what real consequences looked like. I wanted to find everything, I told Benno. Every gift, every trip, every dollar she spent on him. I want a complete financial picture of their relationship. What are you planning, Marcus? I'm planning to make sure she faces the full legal consequences of what she's done. She doesn't get to destroy our family and walk away rich. The next morning, I received a text from Alara. The kids don't need to know all the details. You're just trying to turn them against me. I texted back, the kids deserve honesty. Something you've forgotten how to provide. Her response came immediately. You'll regret this. I smiled grimly as I deleted the message. She was right about one thing. Someone was going to regret this, but it wasn't going to be me. The criminal trial for fraud and identity theft began on a cold Monday morning in November. Alara sat at the defendant's table looking nothing like the woman I'd married. Her surgically enhanced features seemed artificial under the courtroom's harsh fluorescent lights. The evidence was overwhelming. Inspector Benno's investigation had uncovered a paper trail that even Alara's expensive lawyer couldn't dispute. Forged signatures, unauthorized credit applications, theft of business funds. It was all there in black and white. Your Honor, the prosecutor said the defendant systematically defrauded her husband's business and family for the purpose of financing an extramarital affair. She stole over $63,000 and compromised the financial security of 3 minor children. When Alara's lawyer tried to argue that marital problems justified her actions, the judge's expression made it clear what he thought of that defense. Mrs. Valente, Justice Volkov said, you have pleaded guilty to multiple felonies. Do you understand that your actions have devastated your family's financial stability? Alara stood shakily. Yes, Your Honor. I made terrible mistakes. These weren't mistakes, Mrs. Valente. These were calculated crimes committed over many months. The sentence was 18 months in prison followed by supervised probation and full restitution. Alara would also lose any claim to spousal support or shared custody while serving her sentence. As the bailiff led her away, Alara looked back at me with something that might have been regret, but it was too late for regret. Outside the courthouse, Julian put his arm around my shoulder. Dad, is it really over? The legal part is, I said, now we focus on rebuilding. Clara wiped her eyes. I feel bad for being happy about this. You don't have to feel bad. I told her your mother made choices that hurt our family. It's okay to feel relieved that there are consequences. That evening, we had our first family dinner without the cloud of Alara's lies hanging over us. Even little Finn seemed to sense the change in atmosphere. Daddy, why Mommy go away? He asked. Mommy did some things that weren't right. I explained gently. She has to learn from her mistakes. She come back. I looked at my 3-year-old son. This innocent child who'd been used as a pawn in his mother's deception. Someday, I said, but for now, it's just us 4, and that's enough. 8 months later, our lives had found a new rhythm. I'd managed to save the business by selling 2 of the 4 shops and negotiating payment plans with creditors. It meant tighter finances, but we were surviving. Julian had been accepted to State University with partial scholarships that made his education affordable even with our reduced circumstances. Clara was thriving in high school, her grades actually improving once the stress of our family situation stabilized. And Finn was adjusting well to life without the confusion of his mother's double life. He rarely asked about Alara anymore, seeming content with the stability of knowing what to expect each day. The house felt different now, smaller financially, but larger emotionally. We'd learned to appreciate simple things like homework time at the kitchen table and Saturday morning pancakes. I was closing up the main shop one evening when my phone rang. Alara's number appeared on the screen. She'd been released early for good behavior. Marcus. Her voice sounded different, smaller somehow. I was wondering if I could see the children. That's up to them, I said. They're old enough to make their own decisions about that. How are they? They're good, strong. They've learned they can survive difficult times and come out better on the other side. There was a long pause. I know I can't undo what I did. No, you can't. But you can choose what kind of person you want to be going forward. Do you think they'll ever forgive me? I thought about my children, about their resilience and capacity for love despite everything they'd been through. Maybe I said, but forgiveness isn't the same as trust. And trust has to be earned through consistent actions over time. After I hung up, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. The fury that had sustained me through the legal battles and financial struggles had been replaced by something quieter but stronger. A determination to build the best possible life for my children with whatever resources we had. That night, we had a family meeting to discuss Alara's call. The kids handled it with a maturity that made me proud. We'll see her, Julian said, but slowly. And she has to understand that things are different now. Clara nodded. She heard us, Dad. We can't just pretend that didn't happen. Nobody's asking you to pretend. I assured them. We'll take it one day at a time. Looking at my children that evening, I realized something important. Alara's betrayal had broken our family, but it hadn't destroyed us. We learned that love isn't just about staying together. Sometimes it's about having the strength to rebuild something better from the pieces that remain.